Hey, this is Jacob Evan. Thanks for tuning in. In this video, I want to go into the topic of dreams and prophetic dreams and dream interpretation. And I want to present a more balanced view on this subject because, in my experience, there are often two sides to this issue. That one side is that it's all nonsense, that none of it is real or credible anymore, and that only very specific people can experience these things, and that just doesn't happen anymore. That would be one side of it. And another side of it often tends to be that basically everyone can experience this, and that everyone that thinks they're experiencing it usually is. That's the other angle to it, that there is basically no caution to the approach to this. Even mundane dreams might be interpreted under this view as being somehow significant or even prophetic. And so I wanted to provide what I would consider a more balanced view on this, because coming from a Torah perspective, coming from a biblical law perspective, which is the focus of my channel, and part of the reason that I focus on this biblical law perspective is because the biblical law still matters today. It is still supposed to be followed, and the biblical law itself describes it as being for all of the days, for all time. And it's not supposed to be added to, it's not supposed to be taken away from. I have the understanding that there are such things as prophetic dreams, that there are such things as significant dreams which can be interpreted or which have some type of significant meaning to them. And it is certainly possible that someone at some point might experience such a thing. In Numbers 12:6, it talks about this phenomenon. It refers to a prophet having Elohim make himself known to him through a vision or speaking with him through a dream. So it is certainly possible that this thing could happen. And I want us to recognize from the very beginning that people are often desperate to hear from God. People are often desperate to get guidance, to get reassurance, and we need to recognize this fact from the beginning, and we need to consider that very thoroughly, that people are often desperate to hear from God. And I would emphasize that if you ever get the idea that a dream you had might be a message from God, or even a dream that someone else had might be a message from God, then you need to be careful about how you present it. You don't want to end up putting words in God's mouth, which it turns out he has not spoken. This is often severely undervalued or not even considered whatsoever in our culture today. There is no perception of consequence to putting words in his mouth, but in reality is considered a very serious matter in the law. It is far safer for you, even if you are personally convinced of it, to say that you think something you heard or something you dreamed or something that went on may be significant, or that you think something may have been meaningful, rather than just nonchalantly declaring that God supposedly spoke. While many people don't take it very seriously right now, in a law-observant society and in Torah society, it would be taken very seriously. And if you have any question as to how that works, I would suggest looking at Deuteronomy 13 and Deuteronomy 18. So those are the primary scriptural points that I'm going to emphasize in the course of this video. And I'm also going to be discussing the issue of dreams, both based upon my research of it outside of scriptural points, my own experience with it, my observations regarding this. So people can have a lot of dreams. If you sleep reasonable hours, you are likely to dream, assuming there's not something else interfering with that. You are likely to dream even if you don't remember it. A lot of times we are dreaming whenever we sleep at certain points during our sleep. And the mind is almost always in control of our dreams. If you keep track of your dreams, if you pay attention to them, you will notice that usually what's going on is that it's just following the course of whatever is going on in your life at the time. You're thinking about the same kinds of things that you think about during your waking life, or you are reevaluating the events of the day, or you're trying to solve some type of issue or problem in your life. And so the mind is almost always in control of that, and it's almost always creating that experience in our minds. And so if the mind is in control of our dreams, and if the mind also knows that we want reassurance and that we want guidance, the mind can feel compelled to generate those very things, to generate the reassurance and to generate the guidance. And it may know how to get us to feel reassured and get us to feel guided, whether we truly are, whether that is legitimate. So the mind might try to generate a dream that looks like those things that we are looking for, because it may not know the difference. The deep part of our mind may not really know the difference between something that feels like what we want to feel like versus something which genuinely is guidance from God. So this is something that we need to have in the back of our minds, that the mind is a tricky thing, that there's more than meets the eye to what goes on with the mind and what goes on with our dreams. And dreams are often very weird, and dreams often reflect whatever is already going on in our mind, maybe in ways that we didn't realize while we were awake. While we are sleeping and while we are dreaming, there is, from my understanding, a physical process of cleaning the mind that goes on. And there is also this process of reliving events of the day in a controlled manner, in an inhibited manner. And in that process, that may help us to get better understanding and to get better perspective on things. So it is very natural for us to wake up having realized something important, or we have realized some course of action that we want to take, or we will conclude the night by having some dream that subtly indicates those things, whether it be someone telling us this idea or a course of events taking place that demonstrates this idea. This is all very natural. It's a part of what our brain does. In the process of dreaming, oftentimes part of our brain is either not functioning or it's functioning in a different way from normal. And this is very clear to us in many of our dreams, that things are not working the way that they would in our day-to-day life, and something crazy can go on and we never even think, or at least we usually don't think, this isn't possible, this must be a dream. We may not remember certain things about reality, so our memories may not be fully there, they may not be included in the way we're thinking in the dream. Our normal perceptions or our normal understanding of things may be altered, so we might come to some new conclusion in a dream. And after waking, we can realize that maybe there's something to that new conclusion, that new idea we had, and that maybe we just weren't thinking about the subject in a useful way before. Or maybe we wake up and realize that dream was just totally nonsense because, why did I not remember that important detail of reality whenever I was in the dream that just made that idea just totally nonsense, totally unworkable. Sometimes in a bit of a random way, this dream state, this altered way of thinking about our issues, our personal things we've got going on, this altered way of thinking can end up being useful in our waking life, or sometimes it's just kind of a weird form of entertainment while we are sleeping. Dreams can create very real feelings and also very unreal feelings, very strong feelings, very compelling feelings, and sometimes those feelings are associated with a theological passion or spiritual passion or power, whether that be feeling a connection with God within the dream, or what we would describe as feeling a connection with God, or it may be feeling a spiritual strength which is used for some purpose, like speaking the truth or standing up for what is right or fighting against some type of evil in the dream. It may be natural to assume that a dream about God or about theological or spiritual matters might be something to do with being a message from God. But just like we can think about these things in our day-to-day lives, we can also think about them in our dreaming state. And in our dreaming state, it's easier to create these strange images and these strange feelings. Dreams are often filled with weird symbols, strange elements, or different ingredients, if you will, and those ingredients are highly susceptible to interpretation. There are many books, countless websites that describe the meaning of different symbols or ingredients in dreams. For example, it might say, if you have a sports car in your dream, it means this. If you are growing new teeth in your mouth, it means this. The significance of these individual elements may actually be different for every person because we all have at least some difference in what we associate with these different objects, with these different events, or with these different ingredients. A sports car for one person may represent the freedom they felt when they got a certain car at a certain point in their life. For another person, it may represent the car accident they had. For another person, it may represent the high-speed chase that they just watched on the news that evening. It may even mean something different from dream to dream for the same person. And it may not even really mean anything at all. Who knows why some things appear in dreams? If you write out all of your dreams consistently, you know that most of them are nonsense, or most of them are just about things you're thinking about, or the things which are going on in your life at the time, or the things which you heard people talk about during the day. If you're in the process and have been in the process of writing down your dreams, of dream journaling, so ideally as soon as you wake up, as soon as you have consciousness, writing down your memory, there is something you will start to realize about this, and probably all of us have realized at least one aspect of this, and that is that our memories are often not very clear about dreams. So it's weird how you can wake up and it seems like seconds after you are awake that you forget entirely whatever it was that just went on, whatever it was that was just at the forefront of your mind. Or you may remember some small part of it and then not remember the rest of it. And more significantly than that, I want to highlight how it is very easy to distort our memory of dreams after the fact. So let me give an example. There was a time when I was especially inclined to try to force a meaning out of a dream or hope to see messages in dreams. And I was also keeping a dream journal. And I recall thinking about one particular dream repeatedly for several weeks or several months. There was one dream which I either hoped was significant or which I thought might be significant. And I started applying this one particular meaning to it. I started thinking that what it meant was such and such, that things were going to turn out in the future to be this certain way. Eventually, though, I went back to my journal record of that dream, and when I read it, I realized that I had distorted the memory of it, that I had essentially contradicted my own record of the dream with my memory of that dream. So if you think that you are going to derive some significance from a dream at some point, this just highlights how important it is to make sure it is recorded and make sure it is recorded very early on. If we want to think that a dream was significant, we often eliminate the supposedly unimportant or the weird elements of that dream, and we focus heavily on the supposedly important elements of the dream. A dream can be totally crazy and nonsensical, and we might want to highlight one single element and claim that element is meaningful despite all the rest of it. That is pretty questionable in my view. And the same thing goes for dreams that we hear from other people. If we think there is one tiny bit that is significant, we might highlight that part to ourselves. We might think, oh, maybe this was significant, this dream this other person had. And then we are going to think of it as the dream about that one tiny thing that we isolated from the dream. And in reality, the other person's experience of the dream and their recollection of the dream may not even draw attention to that. That may just be some irrelevant part of it or just some minor component of the dream to them. That may not be the important part in the other person's mind. So it's easy to want part of a dream to be significant and then just not know how to reconcile these other parts, which are clearly weird or clearly meaningless. And so our mind tricks us by just deleting those strange parts of it when we remember it, when we think about it. That dream that had this important thing going on that we want to focus on, this important thing that we want to be a foreshadowing of the future, we're just going to forget about that pumpkin that was flying through the air, and we're going to forget about the weird conversation about the flying pumpkin that was in the dream. And this also relates to a point which I've highlighted regarding the things we are paying attention to in Scripture and regarding the things we are paying attention to in our own life, in our own habits. And that is, the more we think about something, the more important it seems. The more we think about something, the more important it seems. So if we had this weird dream that we hope is significant, we might start thinking about it more. If we start thinking about it more, the mind starts to conclude that it must be important. If the mind concludes that the dream must be important, then we might start assuming it has to be a message from God. And that could be completely detached from our original impression about the dream. Originally, we may have had the attitude that we didn't really know, that the dream seemed weird, that there was this one part, but the rest of it just made no sense and seemed like it was just a dream. But over time, if we are so inclined, we might start forgetting all of that other stuff and assume that we always felt the dream was significant in the way that we have come to think about it later. And there's also this element of supposedly foreseeing the future, and I do believe that that is something that can happen. We also have to be aware of confirmation bias. We might remember that we dreamed about seeing a particular person, and then the next day we see that person. And we might think that, I guess we foretold the future, or I guess we foresaw what was going to happen. And maybe that is because there was some perception of future events. And maybe there are other reasons for that too, and I'll talk about that shortly. With regard to the confirmation bias aspect, we don't remember all of the times when we supposedly foresaw what would happen and then nothing happened. So not only are we eliminating the parts of dreams that we think don't fit in with what we want to be important, we also eliminate our memory of these dreams which were considered unimportant as well. And so we don't have this perception of a track record or anything of that sort. So the question might be, how much of this is me just wanting to see validation? How much of this is confirmation bias? The same could be said for interpretations of Scripture. The same could be said for how we read the scriptural text. Does our reading serve the purpose of seeking truth, or does our reading serve the purpose of just confirming what we already believe without any possibility of learning something new, without any possibility of upgrading our views on Scripture? At this point, I wanted to talk a little bit about the experience of dreams. And in my view, dreams can have different categories of content and different types of structure to them. This is not any kind of official list, obviously, and everyone has their own way of categorizing things, and everyone may think that some category or type was left out in the list. But here are some types of dreams that could provide some clarification, that could provide a way for us to look at our dreams. These are overlapping categories, so one dream may match several of these categories at once. It's not that it's only one of these, it could be a bunch of them at one time. So these are some different overlapping types of dreams as I see it. There is the story dream or the linear dream. So we might have a dream where there is some type of coherent thing going on. There is maybe some type of coherent plot, and we're just going about doing a certain thing, or these events are going about taking place, and maybe at some point that gets distracted, or maybe at some point that shifts, but there is this general course of events which are playing out in the dream. And so that might be a story dream or a linear dream. And this may just be part of the dream, or this may be the entire dream. And there is also what I would consider the distorted dream. And in reality, this is probably every single dream that we have in some way, or almost every dream. But only sometimes do we notice this or acknowledge it or remember it. And this would be dreaming about places which we know are a certain place. We know in the dream that they are a certain place, but they actually aren't. They look completely different. There's something which is off about it, but we know what it is in our mind. And there's also people that look different from the person we know, but we know who they really are. This is probably how every dream is, and just sometimes we notice it. Maybe this is meaningful in some psychological level sometimes, or maybe it's just the process of the mind not working at its full capacity. There is the symbol dream and also the impression dream. So what I would consider a symbol dream might be a dream which is just very brief, or a very brief component within a dream, that all it is some symbol which has some underlying meaning to it. And you've probably heard about famous inventors that have had some simple symbol in a dream, and then when they wake up, they realize, oh, that's the solution to the problem that I've been working on. That's the way to build this thing, or to overcome this limitation that we hadn't realized how to fix in waking life. But this also could just be something minor, or some way of representing something which is going on in our lives. And connected with that, I would say, is the impression dream. And how I would describe that is that there might be some single image or very short series of events, and there is an underlying impression or interpretation behind it. So basically, we may just see something, and then we know, for some reason, what that means. And this could be some psychological realization, this could be some personal conclusion, or maybe this could be some type of message, depending. And this could relate to what I would refer to as an embedded symbol dream. So it could be like a symbol dream where there is something that clearly represents something else, but it may be in the form of a story or a sequence of events, rather than just being a single image or some single symbol. There is also a statement dream, something which usually involves some person telling us something, or some short realization where we think to ourselves, okay, this is how that is, very to the point, no meandering, no drifting off into other subjects, very much just a statement and confined to that one particular point. I will say that these often seem more significant just based on that fact, although I would not go so far to say that they couldn't just be a byproduct of our own thinking. There are also lucid dreams and what I would consider a semi-lucid dream. So a lucid dream is essentially where you realize you're dreaming and you exert some kind of control over it. And there may also be varying degrees of this, which is why I have the additional category, at least for myself, of a semi-lucid dream where maybe I realize it's a dream at some point and then just let that go, or don't really control anything. I would be willing to bet that for the most part, these do not have any particular significance other than just our own psychological significance through our own thinking. There are also, as everyone has experienced, these long, rambling dreams. There are dreams which maybe it seems like there is some type of coherent goings-ons at the beginning or at some point in it, then it just goes off in some other direction or just never comes to any conclusion, continuing to loop. And related to that might be the dream within a dream, that sometimes there might be a long rambling dream and in the middle of it there's a symbol dream or there's a statement dream within the middle of that. There are also the stress test or the fight or flight dreams. There are dreams where there is some physical danger that we perceive, and the course of the dream is basically trying to resolve that. Oftentimes these are probably fairly short. And also there are these other types of threats that may show up, like social threats, or we made some mistake and it's the course of trying to correct that mistake to avoid the danger of having done that thing. Some people hypothesize that these are just kind of stress tests, that these are ways for our mind to train ourselves to respond to threats. I don't know if that is true or not, but on some level it does make sense. And I think that also could include some of these dreams where there is a theological defense being mounted, where there is a defense of truth or a fighting against evil in some form. I think that also could come up with this type of dream. There are also dreams that we suddenly wake up from, and this could be for any number of reasons. This could be because it's a stress test and the hormones flood into our system and they wake us up, or some event in the dream startles us awake. Or it could be because this is just a lighter phase of sleep, and so we're more susceptible to waking up anyway. Or maybe there was some sense of importance to the dream that woke us up. It is probably easier to think of certain dreams that wake us up as more significant, assuming that they're not just like being chased by something or some type of fight or physical altercation or whatever. Assuming they're not like that, assuming it's something like a statement dream, and then you suddenly wake up from the statement dream, that may seem like it's more important as a result. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. There are also what I call false awakenings. So you might have a dream, and especially in the case that something bad may be going on, and then you wake up from the dream. But then something else crazy happens, and then you finally wake up from that. So it was a false awakening. You dreamed that you woke up whenever you didn't really wake up. You just went into another phase of the dream. When comparing these categories of dreams and dream structure to the dreams which are described in the book of Genesis, it appears to me that most of those dreams would fall under the category of a statement dream or a symbol dream. Like with the dreams of Abimelekh or Laban, it's clearly a statement dream, at least how it is portrayed. And there's a combination of a symbol and statement. It appears with Jacob, with the description of what it says as a dream, if that is indeed what we would call a dream, what he sees regarding the livestock. And also multiple symbol dreams are described by Joseph and interpreted by Joseph for others. Additionally, Joseph implies that repeated dreams may indicate significance from God. So those are some general structures to dreams, and now I want to talk about revelations or realizations from dreams. So there are the psychologically revealing dreams. And in my view, almost every dream, to some degree or another, at least in terms of showing what we are paying attention to, showing what we are thinking about, or demonstrating how we think about the world, how we perceive what's going on. Almost every dream, to some degree, is psychologically revealing. Now, that revelation may not be of any significance to us. That may not be something new to us in any way, but it's just a result of the fact that it's coming from our mind. That if it is coming from our mind, it is going to demonstrate our way of thinking through it. There is the possibility of a subconscious realization dream. Sometimes it may seem like it's a message. It may seem like it's predicting the future. We can piece things together from our real-world experiences during the dream in a way that we haven't realized yet in waking life. So there may have been clues to something going on behind the scenes that we may have observed these things in real life. We may have observed these things while we were awake, but maybe we didn't piece them together in that way until we were asleep, until we were dreaming. So we may realize, or it may seem like we're realizing, something is about to happen, someone has been doing something, And what really may be happening is that we are just assembling data from our environment that we already were aware of, and we just figured it out in our dream. There is the subconscious suggestion dream. So we may have an idea for a problem that we're working on, or maybe there is this problem and we don't know in waking life what to do about it, and our mind starts searching in the dream for answers, for possibilities. So you may have a problem, the mind starts asking through the dream, can we do this? What about this? Would this maybe work? The mind may also decide that there is one particular course of action that we need to take, and that action is going to be okay. And so you may just wake up thinking, okay, that's how it is, and that's what I'm going to decide on. And this could simply just be an idea we had, or a suggestion that we had for ourselves, or a decision that we made in the dream. And finally, there is this possibility of a message from God. Any serious evaluation of a dream and any serious evaluation of whether it could be a message from God or not needs to involve the recognition of all of these other things, needs to involve the acceptance that our mind plays tricks on us, that our mind can figure things out while we are dreaming, and that our mind can create a very convincing experience in a dream, and that may not actually be from God. There may be the possibility that it is, but that is not the only possibility. So when it comes to having dreams and remembering dreams, if you want to dream more, you have to sleep more. Especially if you want to have dreams which you're going to remember, it is useful to get as much sleep as possible. The more you sleep, the more potential you have for dreaming. If you want to remember your dreams, you have to be in the habit of writing them down. You have to be in the habit of recording them, ideally immediately after you wake up. This will help to train your mind to think that dreams are important enough to remember. And this is inconvenient to do, and you're going to be writing down a lot of dreams that you know have no meaning whatsoever to them, or that are just random thoughts thrown together into some nonsensical story or non-story. And that's not what you're going to want to be doing when you're trying to fall back to sleep at 3 a.m. But if you are serious about wanting to remember your dreams, this is probably a necessary step. One thing I have observed, and this is not necessarily a suggestion, but I have observed that it's often easier to remember your dreams from the night before whenever you get into a meditative state soon afterward in that following day. This is mainly just an observation rather than a suggestion. I suspect that if you're trying to get into a meditative state for the purpose of remembering a dream, then that may make it more difficult. That deliberate working on that may make it more difficult to get into that actual state of mind that you need to be in. And it may just lead to the mind trying to forcibly fill in the blanks, and that could lead to incorrect conclusions. There are also certain types of medicines or foods or drugs that affect dreaming. They may decrease dreaming, they may increase dreaming, and sometimes they can actually increase only certain types of dreaming, which is kind of interesting. So if dreaming is important to you, there are certain types of things you may need to exclude from putting in your body. When it comes to deciding whether a dream is significant or not significant, I cannot tell you a surefire way to know whether it's a message from God. I advise being skeptical about it, and some things you may just have to decide, okay, maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know, but I'm just going to go with it. You can still choose to heed a dream, even if it is just your own advice to yourself. Once again, if you ever think that God has said something in a dream, or you think that God told you something while you were praying, or anything similar to that, I advise that you need to be very calculated and very cautious in how you talk about it. The question should always be, am I willing to stake my life on whether I am right about this? Am I willing to stake my life on claiming that this was the Word of God. That's not to say that you can't suspect it or wonder about it or even entertain the possibility, but if you are claiming it to other people, that is getting into the realm of prophecy, and false prophecy is treated very seriously in the commands. It is not something which is tolerated in the Torah society and the law-observant nation.